Three, two, one.
Welcome back to the Politipop Podcast, the podcast where we take your favorite pop culture media and discuss the social and political themes within. I am your co-host, Mike Booch, a.k.a. Dr. Manfattan, and I am thrilled to be joined by my co-host, Ty.
Hey, it's Ty, a.k.a. the Court of Night Owls, a.k.a. the Silk Spectator.
Oh, damn, that was good. I couldn't come up with any good ones for, like, the rest of them. But
I came up with it 30 seconds ago, so I'm really happy about that.
Hey, the best stuff comes up on short notice. So today we're going to be reviewing HBO's Watchmen. So we're not reviewing the Watchmen comic book necessarily, although
I'm sure we'll refer to it at times.
Many times, yeah, because this show is actually a direct sequel to the comic book as opposed to the movie directed by Zack Snyder, which is its own adaptation.
Yeah. And there's also a DC Comics sequel, which is also not play into this. So it's weird. Watchmen's a very diverse medium, I guess, now. There's a lot of different stuff going on.
And this is the second Alan Moore property we're doing. V for Vendetta was also an Alan Moore property, but if you look in the credits, because we mentioned last time how Alan Moore gave up all of his credits and stuff, how it just says based on characters co-created by Dave Gibbons. That was it.
Yeah, Alan Moore's not a fan.
Yeah, he's keeping himself out of it. So today we're going to be reviewing HBO's Watchmen, and we're
episodes
going to be
1 through 3, right? We're going to be doing the first 3 episodes only.
We're going to be reviewing episodes 1 through 3, then 4 through 6, and then 7 through 9 in the last trio. In the last episode, we record these. But before we do, I just want to talk a little bit. I have one bit of housekeeping, just one, Ty. Do you know what it is?
I'm assuming it's about the DNC.
Believe it or not, it's actually not about the DNC.
Oh, that's shocking.
Yeah, that might be its own thing that because the DNC still isn't over. I know that Kasich had some shit to say that they gave John Kasich more time, the anti-choice advocate, the fucking Republican, than they gave to AOC, who should be the face of the future Democratic Party, like the future of the Democratic Party, but they're trying to keep her in the loop and just kind of make her another fucking establishment Democrat.
Yeah, they gave her 60 seconds of a pre-recorded message that they could approve before they aired it. So if that's not a fuck you, I don't know what is. And
she had some shit to say about it on Twitter, so that was nice. However, She also said, "Oh, well, thank you for recognizing that we need to vote on the Biden-Harris ticket." And I was like, yeah, okay, stop. Yeah, I almost threw up in my mouth. But my bit of housekeeping is actually about the USPS. For those of you who don't know, the United States Postal Service is currently under attack by the Trump administration. The Postmaster General, who was just put in, is a Trump guy, and basically Trump is suppressing votes. The administration is administering voter suppression throughout the entire United States by removing mail sorting machines. They're removing mailboxes. And I've been wondering, I've been talking with you about it, Ty, like, how do we fight this? How do we change things? How do we make it so that way we can do mail-in voting? But also more so just that one of the oldest establishments in the United States history doesn't get destroyed by one fucking asshole because he wants to rig an election. So I did find this Mashable article. You can check it out. It's going to be in the show notes, but it does mention that you can at least, they give you like a number to text in which it allows you to reach out to your congressional representatives. You enter some information to a bot that is known as ResistBot, and it'll like find out who your representatives are and send a letter to them. So that's one thing. There's also, and it also has other ways in which you can resist, in which you can help try and save the post office. So check out our show notes. That way you can see those. Unfortunately, we're not able to protest right outside Postmaster General DeJoy's house right now. But other people are doing that in Greensboro, North Carolina. So that's going to be a bit of a way to get there. But anyone who is there, please keep harassing him and protesting outside. And if any more information comes out, maybe the link I gave you actually is an identity stealing thing. I'll let you know because I already did it. So my identity gets stolen. Boy. It seemed pretty legit.
Got him.
I'm just texting all my information to this bot.
Some dude sitting in his room like, resist bot, idiots.
Yeah, right. It does seem actually like the perfect plan to own the libs.
I mean, whatever. It's, it can't be any worse than everything else that's happening. So
yeah, honestly, it really can't.
And I feel like people are saying the best way to save the post office is to vote come November. But my question is, what if you can't vote? How do you vote out Trump if you can't vote? So I think voting for me is just not an option anymore.
Well, former First Lady Michelle Obama made sure to let everybody know to pack a sandwich and a bag lunch, grab your comfortable shoes, put on a mask, and stand in line all night if you have to vote. Let's just accept things the way they are and do our best instead of
fuck it. Who cares if COVID gets you?
Tearing everything fucking down. Yeah, exactly. Like,
you got a mask on, you're fine.
It's no longer vote or die, it's vote and die.
My question is, if you're in line, right, and you have your mask on, and the guy behind you and the guy in front of you refuse to wear a mask, are they going to kick them out, or is that illegal because they're voting? So what's protecting you? You know what I mean? So
a great question that I don't have an answer to.
And there probably isn't an answer, but these are all reasons people want to do mail-in voting, which is why Trump is trying to block it. I don't know.
Because it's not like we don't have voter suppression already, right?
Yes, we already do.
Like
We've
we do.
Had it for a while.
So now I think the idea is if people are able to mail in their votes, it means that people who normally can't go out and vote, now it's actually more accessible to them. And Trump doesn't want that because he knows he's not going to win.
I mean, voter suppression is probably as vital to the elections than the candidates or the actual voting. I feel like even in the primaries, there was a lot of voter suppression, right, for the Democrats. I mean, both parties do it. So, if they can prevent that, it's in everyone's best interest, I'm sure.
Voter suppression is also an institution as old as the USPS. Oh, my God. Buy a sheet of stamps or something. It's only $11.
It's a shame because I get nothing in the mail anymore. I feel like
really?
Like very rarely. Yeah, very rarely get anything from the mail because unfortunately, as much as I hate Amazon and I hate, talking about how people have been taking advantage, I do have to pay bills and live my life, and that's one of the cheaper options of getting stuff. And a lot of places only sell on Amazon now. I think we've discussed a few times. So the majority of my stuff.
Not on mic, but yeah.
Maybe there's so many times you can go to the website. Like people are like, go to the website, buy directly from that company. Don't give money to Amazon. And you go to the website and they direct you to Amazon. And you're like, fuck, what do I do? So. Unfortunately, it's a lot cheaper to sometimes purchase from them. And I get a lot of stuff from there. I get a lot of cat food. I get, vitamins and supplements and things like that, especially now with COVID, because I don't go to the store unless, it's my own job. I don't get stuff from anywhere else. So it's a weird place to be. I feel bad for the post office. I feel like, I don't know what the answer is for them.
Yeah. Well, if y'all know any buildings to burn down, please feel free to let us know. We'll give our contact info at the end of the episode. All right. Yeah. So
and you can also contact ResistBot for that as well.
Yeah, let ResistBot know. He'll tell you like, oh, this will cripple the infrastructure if you attack this building. ResistBot is a baller.
ResistBot for president.
Hey, we're all going to go in on a margarita pitcher. You want one? I am built to resist. I will take a mimosa. God, fucking resist, Bob, bro. You resist everything. It doesn't matter. Oh, my God. That being said, let's move forward to our review of the first 3 episodes of HBO's Watchmen series. Ty, please give him the plot.
Watchmen. Set in an alternate history where mass vigilantes are treated as outlaws, Watchmen embraces the nostalgia of the original groundbreaking graphic novel of the same name while attempting to break new ground of its own.
Yeah, and I think it does both of those expertly. it does bring back like a lot from the original comic book stuff that I had forgotten. Like if you haven't read the Watchmen comic book, there's going to be spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie, there's also going to be spoilers because they're pretty close. And if you haven't seen the show, there's also going to be spoilers. So just please prepare for those. But like one thing I forgot was that we won the Vietnam War in the Watchmen universe because of Dr. Manhattan's intervention.
Yeah, that was the first and last time that he became involved like in a major event, right? Like that was like his big like, I can't take part in things anymore because it didn't really go the way he planned.
Yeah, and at the time of the Watchmen comic book, it's basically all of the superheroes, all the vigilantes have been disbanded by something called the Keene Act, and so there's only a few people who are still practicing. Dr. Manhattan is basically a man-turned-god who is working for the U.S. government. Rorschach is a right-wing racist vigilante who has a fucking cool mask and administers his own form of hardcore street justice.
He administers equal justice to everybody, okay?
Yeah, we'll see. I found a good Reddit thread talking about why he's racist.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah. I was like, huh.
I didn't realize it when I read the comic originally, but I was like 17, so maybe that's why. I don't know.
Yeah, neither did I. And then like the second time I read it, he's like talking about how like gay people have like bad lifestyles, like they're immoral lifestyles, and he's talking about welfare queens, and I was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, well, the show makes a lot of sense then.
Yeah, yeah, it does. And, you know, by the end of it, the world's smartest man who was also a former superhero, he's now like the richest and smartest man in all of history. He concocts a plan to bring mankind together by creating an extraterrestrial threat. Once again, he created it, so it's technically not extraterrestrial, and wipes out about 3 million people, and because humankind is so afraid of that, they stop being afraid of each other. So we should be in a utopia world. I believe that the show takes place 30 years after the event, in which Dr. Manhattan is now chilling on Mars doing his thing, and you know, we're seeing once again, vigilantes are outlawed, and the whole story takes place not in like a big city like I think the first one did, but it takes place in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah, and I think a big part of this was Rorschach's journal. So, you know, at the end of Watchmen, he had been determined to reveal Adrian Veidt's plot, to tell people the truth. He felt like, you know, it wasn't worth keeping secrets from the people to bring them together. So he had sent a journal to I don't remember if it was a newspaper or something along those lines, and they don't reveal whether or not it got out in the original comic. But here you see that journal plays a very large role in the world of Watchmen that we're seeing 30 years later.
Yeah, the whole show starts off with a flashback into the racist history of Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah, not fictional. And very true.
Yes, this is not fictional. I thought it was, but it turns out.
So did I.
It's not. But yeah, so we started with this little boy watching a silent film, and it seemed at the beginning very Birth of a Nation-esque to me. For those of you who don't know, Birth of a Nation was the first blockbuster that ever came out. It helped revitalize the Ku Klux Klan by depicting black people as monsters, lechers, people who are rude and eating chicken and watermelon all the time and preying on the white women, and it's up to the heroic Ku Klux Klan to come and save them. So that's where I thought this was going, but it's a little black boy in what we find out is a black-owned movie theater, and he's watching this movie about a white sheriff who's actually being taken down by a black marshal. And this marshal is all about like, listen, trust in the law. You know that we don't need vigilante justice because everyone wants to hang the I believe he was a horse thief, the sheriff or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So they want to hang him, and he's like, no, trust in the law. And you know that kind of sets the precedent for this whole show as we see the little boy rushed out of the movie theater by his parents, and we're finding out what happened in Tulsa. This is known as the Tulsa Massacre. It happened in 1921. We have a link to it in the show notes. We have a couple links to it in the show notes, actually. And this basically was known as Black Wall Street. It was an area where black people were living the American dream. They were doing everything they were supposed to. They were educated. They owned businesses. They kept that dollar in their own businesses as well. Like they were helping the black community thrive.
And I mean, like, you know, the crazy thing is, I feel like, you know, white people always argue, well, they should stick with their own kind. They were. they had their own place, right? Where they could live together and they were thriving. And I think just seeing them be successful was such a threat to white people and white supremacists at the time.
Yeah, it really turned Tulsa into a racial powder keg. And all it took to ignite this powder keg was a young black boy. He was a messenger. He was getting in an elevator to deliver a message. The elevator had stumbled a bit while it was going up, and he bumped into the operator, who was a white woman, and she screamed rape. So this this led to the boy being arrested, being brought in. And a few black people came, his father and, some other people came, and they were like, listen, we're here for justice. We're not here to start trouble. We know for a fact that it's impossible for this little boy to have raped this girl, which, if I could talk a bit about white lady tears, because this is, this is historically a problem that white women's voices have been used to end black men's lives. We saw it most recently, and luckily it didn't actually come to fruition, but we saw it most recently with the Central Park woman, Amy, whatever the fuck her name was, and she was trying to call the cops on a bird watcher who wanted her to put a leash on her dog.
Yes. Yep. It's something my girlfriend, who's Hispanic, told me that, women of color have more in common with men of color than they do white women. There's you would think that women would be able to come together, but they really don't. There's still a very distinct difference there, because unfortunately, like you said, white women tears, they can use that to really take advantage of black and brown and people of color and just really do some damage there.
Yeah, that's what got Emmett Till killed as well. Emmett Till, who was also a victim of vigilante justice, he was a victim of a lynch mob. So we see that that's basically what started this. So they get their boy back, and shit popped off. To just be completely candid, white people, Klansmen started storming Black Wall Street, killing people. They show images that I thought were so extreme in the show, but it turns out that's really what happened. They're throwing Molotov cocktails into black-owned businesses, burning the owners alive.
They had aerial support.
Yes, they had planes. They bombed them.
It's unbelievable. It was like a war zone. It was literally like a war zone.
Yeah, and it's so tense and it's scary as we see these parents just trying to get their kid out. And they have to turn their backs on all of their black brothers and sisters because they're trying to just save their own at this point. Yep. They're literally seeing all these atrocities happening in person, and they have to just walk past, soldier on. They end up getting this little boy to a couple of friends. The father, who I believe is a war veteran. Actually, I don't know that.
I don't know. They don't really give you a lot of
uniform.
Yeah, they don't give you a lot of detail about him, but
yeah. So the father, he grabs a letter and he writes on this letter, look after this boy, or protect this boy, or watch over this boy. I think it's watch over this boy, because the watch, both the word and actual watches, have a huge part to play in the Watchmen mythology and in the mythos.
It is called Watchmen, not Look Over Men. So
it is called that. It is called Who Looks Over the Look Over Men. But yeah, so they get this little boy in a trunk, and unfortunately he's the only one that can go. So he leaves his parents behind, almost gets shot through this wooden crate he's hiding out in. He's stowing away in. And and the people who he's with, they get into a car crash, and they're both dead. They end up shot in the head, and this little boy.
His parents are killed behind him. The building's bombed.
Were they the ones who were dragged by the car, or no?
I thought they were just bombed, because he's looking back, and the building he just came out of gets blown up by one of the planes. So I'm pretty sure they were killed there.
Oh, okay. So that happened so quick, I missed it. Thanks for pointing it out. And I want to talk just a bit about this little boy. His father, he puts him in this crate, in this box, and he just says, "Be strong." That's it. He doesn't say "I love you" or anything like that. He just says, "Be strong." And this really spoke to me as the idea of I don't think the black community gets to deal with emotions the way that they're supposed to. There is something known as adultification bias, which I believe we've spoken about a few times before, not by that name, but we do talk about people like Emmett Till, for example, who was a young boy who was tried as, not even tried, I shouldn't use that word, but he was treated as if he was a man who actually committed a crime when he wasn't. Tamir Rice was referred to as a man. Fucking Trayvon Martin was referred to as a man. And most recently, the individual who was shot in Chicago that we mentioned in our last episode, you know, there was this discrepancy between, was he 20 or was he 15? Was he fit? Like, you know, black people don't really get the chance to be kids.
Yeah.
There's this really informative article that's in the show notes as well. There's a couple of them. One of them is called "Why Won't Society Let Black Girls Be Children?" And it talks about how black girls in preschool, I think they made up 20% of preschool students, but we're still made up 54% of the disciplines.
Wow.
And this is preschool. This is under 6 years old. Like, by this point, like, they are being treated as if they're a problem from such a young age. And there's also another one called Let Them Cry, Toxic Masculinity and Black Male Vulnerability. So I suggest that you do check those out if you're listening to this episode now. This is stuff that I've spoken about it in Get Out and Black Panther with Josh, and I brought it up in a few other episodes. But this just kind of hammers that point home. And it is interesting, like, we see the resolve of, I mean, not just black children in general, but, like, he finds this baby, this kid. He's the only one left. He finds a baby and walks away with it. But at no point does this boy shed any tears. It's insane. Like, just the resolve of children to, like, kind of just be like, all right, I guess this is life. Like, they don't know what to compare it to, so they just keep moving. Like, that's what kids do. They really illustrated that so well in this show.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so we do find out a little bit more about this world. It turns out that Rorschach's journal, which you mentioned earlier, Ty, was sent to a newspaper, and it was widely published, and it became kind of like a manifesto for white supremacists. They dropped the Klan hood and they adopted Rorschach's mask. And it turns out that in one coordinated attack in one night, known as the White Night, they all attacked the police force of Oklahoma. Because this is a world in which Robert Redford has been elected president. So we have a celebrity president, very, very prescient, except this celebrity president decided that he was going to administer reparations for all those who are victims or are descendants of victims from the Tulsa massacre. And this really riles up the white supremacists. They hate it because this brings a bunch of black people back to Tulsa, and they start opening up their own businesses. It's like almost a revival of Black Wall Street, and they fear this. So these white supremacists, they take on the Rorschach mask.
Yeah, they call themselves the cavalry, right?
Yeah, they call themselves the 7th Cavalry, 7K, and they decide that they're going to get rid of all of the cops. And the only way to rebuild the police force is they start wearing masks to protect their identities. Nobody is allowed to know if you're a cop. Nobody's allowed to know who the cops are in real life because they are under that much danger from white supremacists.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And, in this world where there had been masked vigilantes, we had superheroes and things, they outlawed that. And now the cops are those characters, right? Like Sister Night, the Red Scare, like they have alter ego names and everything. And, they start to, in a scary way, even though they're kind of the good guys, they start taking advantage of their position a little bit, right? They don't have to read people their rights. They can abuse them because no one's really watching them. No one knows their identity.
Yeah, it's such a conflict of feelings for me. And I mentioned it to you off mic, how we see these cops that are blatantly violating people's civil rights. They will just beat the shit out of you and take you into a black site to get interrogated and stuff, and drive vehicles that are unmarked sometimes, which is what Long Night does. They call her Sister Night because they're like brothers and sisters in arms, but I think her official superhero name is actually Long Night.
Is it?
Is it?
I thought it was Sister Night.
Oh, no, she is Sister Night. You're right. For some reason, I thought it was the Long Night. I guess I got my HBO properties mixed up and was
Game of Thrones.
Yep, with the Long Night.
The Long Night.
We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. We're going to be jumping around a bit, but I want to talk about this moment where the guy gets pulled over in the truck at the beginning of the show. It happens just after the Tulsa flashback. Do you want to go into that actually?
Into that scene?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
tell a good story.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
That's what I'm
So basically, we have a white male who's pulled over. He's in like a pickup truck, right?
Yeah,
And
pickup truck.
we have a police officer who's now wearing like a yellow bandana, yellow mask around their face, because even
called
patrol
gators nowadays.
Yeah, even patrol officers have to wear a mask. No police officer, I think, except for the chief, probably shows their face anymore. And he pulls them over, kind of questions them, asks them a couple things, and I don't remember what he says to him, but the man he pulled over makes a comment, right? Doesn't he make like a smart ass remark to him?
Yeah. So I mean, the layout of this whole scene is so weird because we see, if you look closely, you can see that the cop is actually black and the guy he's pulling over is white. But this white guy is so nervous. He rolls down his window. He spills his drink and he's like, oh shit. And he puts both of his hands on the steering wheel and, he's talking to the cop and he's like, I'm going to reach for my license and registration. It's in the glove compartment. But the smart ass remark that he makes is the guy says, can I see your license and registration? Oh, no. He says, what are you hauling? And he says, I'm hauling lettuce. And he goes, can I see? And he goes, can I see your face?
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, license and registration, buddy. And I'm actually feeling really bad for this guy who's getting pulled over. I'm feeling uncomfortable for him.
Yeah, and then the scene really quickly flips, right? So we follow the police officer back to his car, and he's running all this stuff, and he knows something's amiss, right? He knows this guy's up to something. He spotted something in the glove compartment, which I think tied into the 7th Cavalry.
He said that it looked like a Rorschach mask.
Right, so he calls this in, and it turns out that police officers' guns are now under like an electronic lock, and you cannot access it without permission from headquarters. So he has to wait to get it buzzed out, and he's like, buzz my gun out. And they're like, stand by. And he's waiting, he's trying, and they're like, all right. He goes to pull it, and it's stuck. He's like, nope, didn't work again. They're like, all right, go ahead, stand by. And he's waiting, and he's getting nervous. And he keeps looking up at the truck to see if anything's amiss, and he doesn't see anything. And finally, the electric lock, comes off, and he's like, all right, it worked. Starts to pull the gun out, and he just gets lit up by, I think, a machine gun or a pistol from the truck in front of him. And it turns out the guy in the truck is 7th Cavalry, right? And he just lights up this police officer. And then he throws a piece of lettuce on him, right? He throws it right onto his lap, and then he pulls away. And I think this is all done very intentionally. I think they want, if you happen to be someone who supports the police, who supports, white supremacy, now you see kind of maybe from a different perspective a little bit, right? Like, what is it like when the police don't respect your rights, for example? They do it to black and brown people all the time. What if they started doing it to white people, right? How do you feel about this cop, being shot up if you support the police so much? So it definitely plays with the viewer's emotions. And obviously this is all very intentional to kind of switch up from the real world. And it's a really intense scene. You don't know what's going to happen exactly. You don't really know who to root for, right? They're both masked individuals.
Yeah, the thing that really shocked me was that he had to request use of his weapon. Yeah. Like it's in a lock in his car, and he had to keep requesting it, and then there was a malfunction, he couldn't pull it out, like you said, and then he did get lit up, and really this guy in the Rorschach mask, I don't know, could he have just let it go? Maybe. I mean, I don't know. The cop clearly was really he had nothing to be afraid of, because he was he was hauling lettuce. But
wasn't there weapons underneath the lettuce?
There might have been. They never tell you where he got the gun from, honestly.
Okay,
but if the cop did go to search his car, then he probably would have found the mask and weapons as well. Yeah,
and I guess an argument could be made, if that police officer could have reached for his gun sooner, would he have not been shot? It's definitely interesting. It really turns it on its head for you.
Yeah.
In a world where we see police brutality, we at the same time we don't want to see people being killed on either side, right?
And we see also that not every cop is a vigilante either. They're cops in full uniform. They just happen to be wearing a yellow mask that covers from their nose down. But there are those, like you said, there's the Red Scare, there's Looking Glass, there's Sister Night, who who are all actively working with the police department. There's Panda, who's just a fucking dude who wears a big panda mask over
I
the
feel
top
like they're
of his
more
head.
like detectives, right? They're obviously senior officers who are in charge of certain cases. Like Looking Glass is the interrogator guy, right? Like that's his specialty. So it's definitely it's unique, and we do later learn that this is only being done here in Oklahoma. It hasn't been done all over the country. But it's starting to become popular, and people want to see it kind of expand to other areas, other major cities, to protect these police officers' lives and things like that.
Now, I want to talk real quick about Oklahoma. Now, you and I both have, Pope, who lives in Oklahoma, was a former guest on our Halo episodes.
Yes.
One of the guys who he served with, is actually not only an Oklahoma resident and an Army vet, but also a black man. So I asked him for his opinion real quick, and I was just like, how racist?
He didn't
is
serve with
Oklahoma?
him, by the way.
Oh, he didn't. How the fuck did they know each other?
They were just best friends before. They knew each other from Oklahoma.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Small town. So he didn't serve with them, but they both did serve.
They did both serve, yeah, separately, yeah.
So I asked him, first off, I said, how does this Oklahoma and Watchmen compare with your Oklahoma? He said, I haven't watched it yet, so I was like, all right, fuck you. I didn't say that. I said, start watching it and listen to the podcast. But he said, quote, Oklahoma is weird. Our racism is low-key, but it's real. For example, we still have a sundown town called Blackwell. It's even on their wiki. Now, I don't know much about Blackwell. I didn't get a chance to look it up, but you fucking do it, listeners. Shit, I can't do all the work here. But it is interesting, like, to get the opinion of a black man who, like, yeah, he's saying, like, it's not outright there, but, it definitely happens. And we do see a lot of, some subtle racism in the show as well. Like,
but that's everywhere, right? I mean, like,
well, yeah, that's true.
It's everywhere. It's here. It's every state and every city. Unfortunately, that's America. So, it sucks, but it's just, that's what it is. And I think that's why this show embraced this so much. They really wanted to put a spotlight on racism. And I have people that I talk to are like, I don't know how I feel about them really focusing on this with Watchmen. And I'm like, maybe that wasn't the original goal of the first Watchmen, but Alan Moore always likes to put a spotlight on social and political issues. So if this is what, we gotta focus on right now, which we do, then why not?
Well, I'm sorry if you like any of these people, because I'm going to say it's kind of idiotic to say that in the first place. The original Watchmen is a political work. It is. It may not be specifically one side or the other, but similar to like Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, right? It's all about extremes. You have one left view that's super extreme, a right view that's super extreme. You have, Dr. Manhattan, who's in the middle to the extreme because he's no longer even a human. He can't relate to them anymore. Like, it is an interesting take to see someone say that, I don't like Watchmen attacking racism, but it's like, no, it's like, it's always been there. And guess what? It's about time we see fucking racists as the bad guys.
Yep.
I don't know, like, they are the bad guys. When I was in the Collector's Corner on Facebook, which is a hugely... I don't want to say a hugely racist comic book group, but it is a comic book group, a collective full of a lot of fans and creators. It's quite the community, but there's a lot of racists there. There's a lot of people from the Midwest who are like, oh, I love this comic book that has the swastika on it because it's all about free speech. And I love, Jonah Hex because he was like a Confederate soldier or something like that. I don't know Jonah Hex's fucking history, but like, they were talking about how like, oh yeah, the Confederates were in this comic book. And I was like, no, I think that's fine as long as they're made out to be the bad guys. And the guy's like, well, they're not the bad guys, though. Like, so how does that make sense? And I'm like, okay, so there we go. So, yeah, it's about time we fucking make racists the bad guys because guess what? They are. And there's a really great moment where Sister Knight, in her civilian form, as Angela Abar, she's at her child's class for career day, and she's explaining how she is a baker and how she bakes her cookies and all this other stuff, and she's talking about her history, that she was actually born in Vietnam just before it became a state. Well, at least that's what she said. I don't know if that changes in the future because now I'm thinking of how old she might be. But she was in Vietnam before it became a U.S. occupied state. And then she came to the U.S. She came to Oklahoma. She became a cop. She was attacked on the White Night and then decided to retire, quote unquote. Later on, she becomes a vigilante. But she says, I'm opening up a bakery. And this little boy goes, did you use your Redferations? What do they call it? Redferdations, right?
Redferations, yeah, because it's Redford
like,
reparations, right?
Yeah. He's like, did you use your Redferdations to build that, to open that business? And she like got upset. And then her son, who was in the class, fucking attacks this kid. And,
Yeah.
And, on the ride home, what one go him, but on the ride home, the kid says, that boy was racist. And she goes, well, he might not have been racist, but he's on the right track.
Yeah, and his son is white, right? I think that's good to know too. Her son is white.
It's very important to note. Yeah,
Topher,
all of their kids are white.
But he still recognizes that, and he still obviously loves and wants to defend his mom, mom figure.
Yeah. Yeah, in some ways, I think that this show could actually be a wet dream for cops because, like, they do believe, like, oh, like in real life, I mean, the police are under attack and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And that's very much how it is in this show. The police are under constant attack. They have to, cover their identities, except, in our world, the police are protecting their identities so that way they can't be held accountable for perpetuating racism, as opposed to the Watchmen world where they can't be held accountable for bringing racists to justice. So it is an interesting dynamic there. But I do want to talk real quick about Rorschach because I decided to look it up, and there's a really interesting Reddit thread also in the show notes. But they bring up 3 points that say that Rorschach is racist, which
okay.
Upon second reading of Watchmen, I was like, he's definitely got some conservative views. I wouldn't call him a racist, but here's an excerpt from the New Frontiersman, which is the only paper that Rorschach reads, and I believe the paper he sent his journal to at the end of Watchmen. So,
okay.
So it says there's the article. Now, once again, it's a fake article in the Watchmen universe, in the newspaper that Rorschach reads. It says, what about the Boston Tea Party? What about the spirit of the Lone Ranger? What about all those occasions when men have found it necessary to go masked in order to preserve justice above the letter of the law? It's like encouraging vigilantism. Nova Express makes many sneering references to costumed heroes as direct descendants of the Ku Klux Klan, but might I point out that despite what some might view as their later excesses, the Klan originally came into being because decent people had perfectly reasonable fears for the safety of their persons and belongings when forced into proximity with people from a culture far less morally advanced. No, the Klan were not strictly legal, but they did work voluntarily to preserve American culture in areas where there were very real dangers of that culture being overrun and mongrelized. So, yeah, Rorschach is reading a paper that is glorifying the Ku Klux Klan. 1. Rorschach's complaining about his landlady having different children with different men and being a welfare cheat while owning rental property. Which is point number 2. Now, for those of you who don't know about the welfare queen, it was a myth that was brought up by I want to say it was Ronald Reagan. It was Reagan. And when he did that, the Klan actually endorsed him. There's links in this thread about that, in which the Klan openly endorsed in a newspaper Ronald Reagan because his views aligned with their own so much. And 3, Alan Moore based Rorschach on Steve Ditko's The Question and Mr. A, in large part to make fun of his objectivist Ayn Rand worldview. So Steve Ditko was probably best known for being a Spider-Man artist on Amazing Spider-Man back in the day. He passed away probably a couple years ago. And they were asking Alan Moore, and they said, when you read some of Ditko's diatribes in The Question and in some issues of Blue Beetle, did you read it with bemusement or disgust? Alan says, well, and they go, a mix of both? And he goes, I learned pretty quickly about the sources of Steve Ditko's ideas, and I realized very early on that he was very fond of the writing of Ayn Rand. They say, did you explore her philosophy? He says, I had to look at the fountainhead. I have to say I found Ayn Rand's philosophy laughable. It was a white supremacist dreams of a master race burnt into an early 20th century formed. And then at the end of the interview, he admits that Rorschach was supposed to be the Question, basically. He was like kind of a play on the Question, who is a mainstream DC character without a face.
I love it.
So yeah, it's pretty fair to assume that Rorschach definitely had some racist views if he wasn't a direct racist, but as we say for, all the people who voted for Trump in 2016, you may not have been racist, but you decided that racism wasn't a deal breaker for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
yep.
Yeah, and so that, so whereas Rorschach might not have wanted a bunch of Klan revivalists to take his mask up And by the way, Rorschach was killed at the end of Watchmen by Dr. Manhattan. So, he might not have wanted that exactly, but his views aligned pretty well with theirs for them to be able to take it, and boom, that's basically their Mein Kampf.
Wow.
Yep.
That's a good article.
Yeah. That was actually just a Reddit thread, but they brought up some really good points. Yeah, right?
Wow.
But if I could also bring up this little fucking kid in Topher's class, because she said that she was from Vietnam, so he had no reason to believe that she would be a descendant of anyone from the Black Wall Street massacre, and therefore she wouldn't be eligible for Redfordations, so it just, he is a little kid, but it does go to show the ignorance that, the adults who taught him that, the ignorance of adults we have here. You see that picture online of all the native people flipping off Mount Rushmore, and someone says, if you don't like this country, you can leave it. And it's like, motherfucker, it is their country.
Yep. And we see, another character later on who they don't really explain who he is. He says he has visitation with Angela's kids, and
Bobby.
He brings up the Redfordations too. Right? Yeah, Bobby from Supernatural.
Yes,
so it just seems like everybody, if you're black, they're just going to call you out on that, right? They're just going to make you feel bad about it and say how, you got a government hand-me-down, right? That's the big thing.
Yeah, they're calling it handouts. One person has a picket sign later on says, you already got a sorry, now you want a handout? Which is a huge problem that we still have in our society, that we have all these people who, they called Obama the affirmative action president, because yes, affirmative action will get you a job as the commander in chief. Of course it will. You had Trump calling him out and starting the birther movement. Was he even born here? Blah blah blah. This whole idea of, do you deserve what you're getting? And even to the point today, you still have people who are like, oh, well, they have the right to vote. They have this, interracial marriage is legal. What else do they want? What more do they want? And it's a simple thing. It's two simple things: equality and equity. Because guess what? Those rights shouldn't have been yours to give in the first place. They shouldn't have belonged to the white man and the white government in the first place to give to black people. So,
yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so don't give me the whole oh, what more do you want thing. But also I noticed equity the other day because we started gardening during the apocalypse, and I realized that equality means all the plants get the same amount of water. But you know what? Not every plant needs the same amount of water. So some of them might need more in order to grow. Some of them might need a little bit less. It's all about how you distribute that wealth or water to help certain communities or certain plants, as you might put it. So we do find out that Angela, she is Sister Night. She gets this call on her beeper when she gets to her house. Her husband is there playing with one of their other white children. We do find out that the reason these two black people have white children is because those kids' parents were killed on the White Night because they were the kids of cops.
Yeah, so, and they were her partner's kids. Both her partner.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
And his wife were killed in their bed while they were asleep. And Topher, the eldest son, who had attacked that kid in class to protect Angela, he actually saved his siblings by hiding in a closet with them. So it was obviously a very traumatic night for all of them, and I think she felt the responsibility of taking these kids and giving them a safe place, or as safe a place as she could find for them.
And this code that she gets on her beeper is interesting because it's from the chief of police, and it's Little Bighorn. Now, I should be more of a history buff because I majored in it, but, school is what it is. But it turns out that I didn't know, but Little Bighorn was actually a victory for the Lakota, Northern Cheyenne, and Arapaho Native American tribes, or I should just say indigenous tribes, against the U.S. Army in 1876. A lot of people call it Custer's Last Stand because they want to make it about the American side.
They always make it heroic, right? That he fought, time and time again to hold it.
Yeah. Meanwhile, it was because the U.S. was trying to take land from the natives, and they were like, "Hey, could you not do that? And we'll fight you for it."
Yep.
That's what it was. And also an interesting note that later on in another episode, we do see that there is a Native American painting, which is in Chief of Police Judd's house. So, so that I guess that's something that he, he seems to be like a white guy, but he's pretty cool. He's a white chief of police, but he's all like about like, we're not racist. We're all about justice, blah, blah, blah. He makes it a point to go visit the wife of the cop who was shot up by Lettuce Man. And, he seems to be a pretty cool dude. Before Sister Night goes to meet him, she pulls into Nixonville, which is a trailer park full of people who are obsessed with President Nixon. And I had to note that they're not flying the new American flag. The new American flag is like, it's still stars and stripes, but it's a blue circle with all the white stars inside of it. And then the stripes are on the outside of that circle. Seems kind of like a unity thing to me, I guess.
Yeah.
But they're flying the old school American flag, which is the one you and I have today. They're flying that in the trailer park. Very similar to how, some people still fly Confederate flags. I think that's the point. That before President Robert Redford came in for 30 years, which is weird, and changed around the country, that they were still very much living in a world that's somewhat similar to ours. And we even see on one of the trailers that someone wrote, fuck Redford. And, because he was the president who gave a fair shot to the black community in Tulsa. But yeah, Sister Night goes in, beats the shit out of some guy, and then takes him to the black site where they're actually contemplating. Once again, I'm blown away by this idea that the police are not allowed to use deadly force unless it's absolutely necessary. That's just something we don't see.
Yeah, absolutely not. It's almost encouraged here. They train a lot of police officers to shoot as soon as they feel they, are in danger or have the right to. It's kill or be killed on the streets, and here it's very different.
Oh, and I also want to make a point that the chief was called in for one of his cops who was shot because, and by the way, this cop, everyone who was helping him in the hospital, the police are running background checks on everyone who saw his face. Like, that's how bad it is that, like, and I mean, this is it too, right? We have them in our hospitals and in our government positions. We have white supremacists all over. So they're doing background checks to these people to make sure that, that they can be trusted with the identity of this cop. But he's called in from what's later called, and I want to say episode, either at the end of episode 1 or episode 2, it's called Black Oklahoma. He's watching the play Oklahoma, but there's a bunch of black people in it. Very, very mixed casts, and this was so reminiscent of Hamilton to me.
Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, in the same way that Hamilton was like this play glorifying people in American history who were actually monsters. But leaves behind all that stuff. Like, it leaves behind the slavery. We don't mention that Thomas Jefferson was the illegitimate father of all these mixed children because he raped his slaves and stuff like that. They don't mention that in Hamilton. It's really made to kind of like take away that history. And Mackie, I'm sorry. We'll talk about it. We'll have an actual episode with you on it, and we can all talk about Hamilton together because I liked a couple of the songs. But they did the same thing with this version of Oklahoma. It turns out Oklahoma was like the first big play or musical that was written by Rodgers and Hammerstein, and it is a classic. It's been adapted so many times, but it is a very white cast. So in 2012, I want to say it was Seattle. They made a version with more black people because, as we've seen at the beginning of this episode, there's a huge black history in Oklahoma. There's a huge black history in the United States in general, but nobody wants to acknowledge that. But you know what they did when they put black people in, Ty? They made the bad guy black.
Oh.
Yeah, and he was like this lustful monster trying to keep the main character away from his love.
Oh my.
Yeah. So that's what Judd was watching.
So interesting about the chief. So he obviously loves musicals, right? They kind of insinuate that, and at one point he breaks into song because he's very close to Angela's family. Like, him and his wife come over for dinner. The kids love him. They're all really, really close.
It's really beautiful, yeah.
Right, and Angela kind of made up a story about not being able to make the musical. She had no interest. His wife, Jane, I believe her name is, makes a comment about during intermission, he said it was, boring or he didn't like it. And she says, I think he's just jealous because he was curly in high school or college.
Yes, he was the lead.
Right, he was the lead. Now, later on, skipping ahead a little bit, we find a Klansman outfit in his closet. So, it got me thinking, I'm like, did he find was he angry about the play, about the musical, because it was a black cast? You know, did he feel like that could have been him up there, or someone, you know, who was white up there? I don't know. It got me thinking that there was more to that comment than just, it was just boring, you know.
Wow, that's such a great point. I didn't even think about that, but you're right. Like, looking back on it, now that you know, like, there was a Klansman outfit in his closet. Reason being is because he was hanged at the end of the first episode, I believe. So he was lynched, and Angela's looking into it, and she finds this Klansman outfit and doesn't know what to make of it because she's black. Her husband's black. And, you know, this guy was the chief of police whose specific mission is to bring down racism. So why?
And their best friend. He's the uncle of their kid. You know, it's like Jean, the wife, says he loved you. She says to Angela, he loved you so much. You know, how could he be a racist? How could he be a member of the Klan or the 7th Cavalry when he showed so much love and devotion to helping, you know, her and other people like her? It's heartbreaking. And not to mention, it turns out that the person who is most likely responsible for his death, because he says he is, a black man in the wheelchair, is Angela's grandfather, right? She does a DNA test and finds out that she's actually related to him. And which is just wild, and she doesn't believe him. She doesn't even bring him down to police headquarters, right? She actually takes him to the bakery because she doesn't want to turn him over, because I think she's trying to mull over, how would a man in a wheelchair lynch someone from a tree? It just doesn't make sense. And, you know, he's kind of maybe joking, maybe not. He's like, I got psychic powers, right? Maybe I'm Dr. Manhattan. You know, he's making like little comments and jabs at her, and he won't really give her all the information. She has to really pull from it because he wants her to figure it out on her own. And he made that comment about he has skeletons in his closet. That's why he killed him. So she literally goes into his closet and found that outfit. And he's like, well, I didn't mean literally. Was that in his closet? And it's you know, it's kind of humorous, but
he's great. Louis Gossett Jr. really plays this role to perfection. On the whole, I think the acting in this show is fantastic all around. I haven't, you know, later on when we get to see Laurie Blake and stuff, like, I think everyone is fucking bringing their A game, especially Sister Night's actress Regina King.
Yeah, she's a fantastic actress. She's really good in everything I've seen her in.
Another thing we find out about her grandfather is that he was the little boy, I believe. At least that's what they lead us to believe in the first 3 episodes.
They're definitely insinuating that.
Yeah, that he was the little. Oh, that means he's not. Okay, that's all I need. That's all I need to know. We're led to believe because he has the same letter that the man gave to his son at the beginning. That O.B. gave to his son at the beginning, and so we're led to believe that in fact he was that little boy. And
he does say he's 104 years old, I think. She's
does
like,
he say his age?
She goes, "You're 90 fucking years old. You couldn't have hanged him, you know." And he's like, "I'm 104 actually, and I have psychic powers." And like, it's just is so funny.
That's brilliant.
Oh, he says you curse too much. I'm sorry. He says you curse too much. That was
he does
response.
Say that. Can I talk about Robert Redford's politics real quick?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so I had to look it up because I'm like, what the fuck makes Robert Redford the president they decided to choose? Like, I feel like
he Hail Hydra, man. I don't know if I trust that guy.
Yes, that's right. He was on Hydra's side. And also, but Robert Redford is he's very much in the same vein of Ronald Reagan. He was a Western star. Yep. You know, like, and it seems like, why would we want another celebrity as president? But it, you know, it seems in Watchmen's universe, he's really done a great job depending on who you're asking. Yeah. You know, there are people who believe that he's taken away rights day by day and that he's responsible for all of the squids that happen to be raining down, that there's a whole conspiracy about that. We can go into it. We don't have to. But there was an article written in The Hill. It was back in 2018. And this is really one of the few things I could find because historically he's met with and backed a lot of Republican governors for office. He also endorsed Barack Obama for his reelection. You know, so it's tough to say. If I were to give him a side, I would say obviously capitalism, but I don't. Yeah. You know, but I wasn't able to find like a lot on his politics. But he did have this one bit that he wrote. And he said, "For the first time I can remember, I feel out of place in the country I was born into and the citizenship I've loved my whole life. For weeks I've watched with sadness as our civil servants have failed us, turning toward bigotry, mean-spiritedness, and mockery as the now normal tools of the trade." The actor and Sundance Film Festival founder urged Americans to be better than our politicians. Oh, and then he also says, how can we expect the next generation to step up and serve, to be interested in public life, and to aspire to get involved when all we show them is how to spar, attack, and destroy each other, he wrote. So that was a pretty interesting thing for him to say. It was clearly, anti-Trump. Although I think one of the quotes that was in a book about Trump was taken from an interview that Redford had, where he said, like, he's glad that Trump was in the race. This is back in 2015. He was glad that Trump was in the race because it would, like, shake things up, you know?
Right. Yep.
So I don't know. I don't know why they chose Redford. Maybe it'll come up later on. But I did think it was an interesting choice, and it's very appropriate that we do have a celebrity president in the office in Watchmen, where we have one right now as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd like to talk about Jeremy Irons' character a little bit. He's in the first episode. He only has a couple scenes. We'll just skip right ahead and say, in the third episode, they reveal that he is Adrian Veidt, a.k.a. Ozymandias, a former superhero, right? Who was kind of involved with Dr. Manhattan and Rorschach and concocted that entire plan.
Yeah, he was the one who brought about world peace by killing 3 million people. That was his plan.
Yeah, he's one of the most brilliant minds of all time, also very wealthy. And he is, they say he's dead, right? I think they say that he's been killed. And we don't know what we're seeing, right? He is surrounded by two people, I think Mr. Phillips and Miss Crookshanks, of which there seem to be multiple versions of. And he kills them at will. He has them perform a play in which they reenact how Dr. Manhattan was created, and he murders Mr. Phillips, and then he has another one come down dressed as Dr. Manhattan, and it's very, very strange. There's a game master who's like trying to hunt him and stop him from going out and hunting animals, and we don't really quite know what's going on in these 3 episodes.
Yeah, we don't know where he's living, why he's living there. He's just out of the.
We don't know when it's taking, but nothing. We know nothing about it. It's just him and these 2 characters that we keep seeing
when it's taking place. So it's in a different timeline. All right, good to know. Keep giving me.
It might be
for the listeners. Ty has actually seen the whole series before, and he's rewatching. I'm watching it for the first time, so I'm still trying to put pieces together.
Everything together. And in the 3rd episode, they show him actually put the outfit on, his superhero suit on. And we don't really know much more than that. We don't know, what he's up to, what's going on, but we do know that he is, Adrian Veidt, who was a very, very vital character to this entire world. And as we still see squid alien droppings in the world, which has become like a commonplace thing, obviously the effects of what he did are being felt throughout. So I'm sure you're looking forward to seeing the role he plays in later episodes. And I'm excited to rewatch those. But
definitely,
yeah,
because like I really want to hang on to the Watchmen I know, and I want to see parts of that, and they do it so well, like to the point that it's not too much, but it's also not too little. Like they provide such a great take on these characters as we move forward.
Yeah, I mean, our main character is really Angela Abar, who's a new character, but at the same time, they very much want you to remember this is Watchmen, and the things that happened in Watchmen have directly affected everything that you're seeing. And I think that's really well done. And another character that returns from the original Watchmen is Laurie Blake, who I think is one of the best parts of the show.
Now, in the comics, she went by Laurie Jupiter because that was her mother's name.
Yeah, so, in Watchmen, it's revealed that she is actually the daughter of the comedian. And it's a very controversial reveal. The comedian was I don't know what would you consider him? He was both a hero and a villain, right? He was a very complicated character.
Yeah, he was a vigilante. He was burning people alive in Vietnam, and he fucking loved doing it. He was a soldier vigilante. I would say he's that guy. Like, he was there rounding up people and abusing them during protests when they were protesting Vietnam. He was in Vietnam. He got a woman pregnant and then shot her. Not like right after, but like later on.
Jesus Christ.
He just finished and he was like, I know. But he shot it. No, that's fucked up.
Oh my God.
But yeah,
that's why they call him the comedian.
And at one point, he also tried to rape one of his fellow superheroes, who was Sally Jupiter, who would end up having the daughter who'd end up having his daughter, Lori Jupiter. Now, he didn't succeed in this rape, so it means that later on in life, the two of them just came together and they had a kid, and she went her entire life hating the comedian and not knowing that he was her father.
He was also murdered by Adrian Veidt, right? Because he was getting close
right.
to the truth.
Yeah.
He kind of starts the entire Watchmen comic. He's attacked in his home. He has this epic, hand-to-hand fight with a masked vigilante assailant, and he's thrown out the window, and his button has the blood down it, and that begins Rorschach investigating his murder, right? Vigilantes, heroes are being murdered. And it was Adrian Veidt, we find out, who killed him. So there's a lot here, and obviously Lori hasn't taken his last name is huge. And I think in the show you see her kind of acting more like him than her mother. She was the Silk Spectre, the second Silk Spectre, right after her mother. She took on
she was.
Her heroic identity. She's very much like her mom. And now she's acting more like her dad. She's working for the government. She's anti-vigilante, right? She's actually helping round them up. She is hard as nails. She doesn't take any shit, right? She can be pretty funny too, like when she first approaches all the masked cops in Tulsa, and she's like, "Sir, have you been read your rights? Do you feel like you're being violated?" And he's like, "Yes, I do." She's like, "I'm just kidding. I don't care. Where's the looking glass?" Like she's just,
she's very
she doesn't mess around.
Like the straight to the point, nihilist, hard motherfucker that her father was. And also the whole episode she's introduced and is based around her sending a message to Dr. Manhattan and that she doesn't even know if he's going to get because it's like a public phone booth sort of thing that goes to Mars. But she's telling him jokes, and this is that was like the comedian's whole thing. And not even,
but they're really fucked up jokes, right? They're like really, they're not funny jokes, because that was the comedian's whole thing. He would say like these really like controversial, horrible things. It's all a joke, right? And that's kind of where she's going with this. She's telling these stories that are just very traumatizing and brutal. And she's telling them on the phone. We don't really understand why, but I think you kind of see that she's lonely, right? Like it's kind of a lonely job. She actually has a Dr. Manhattan dildo at one point, right?
I think it's a vibrator, personally.
Vibrator, yeah. So, she's, you find out what happened to Night Owl, for example, right? She started a romance with him in Watchmen.
Oh, yeah,
but I
that's
think
right.
there is a line by, who is it? Senator Keene, Joe Keene, the one who actually began like the face mask thing for police, and I think he's maybe running for president. I know he's a senator.
I think people are hoping that he runs against Redford and outs him as the president of the United States.
Right. So he makes a comment to her, and he says, the power of a presidential pardon, offering that could even get her owl out of that cage. So I
because she has
feel
an
like
actual owl in.
She literally has an owl, but I think maybe Night Owl has been arrested.
I forgot about that.
He is sitting in a cell for vigilantism, and there's no way to help him unless he gets a presidential pardon. So I think that was, kind of a little hint at where his whereabouts are. And she's lonely, she's by herself. She kind of has like this understudy with her that she brings on, and he starts bringing up some information about Adrian Veidt and Dr. Manhattan. She's like, "You want an autograph?" And he's like, "Listen, I'm a history major. You brought me on here. That's what you brought me here for. I'm not here for an autograph. I'm just trying to get to the point." And she kind of tells a little bit more of her history, and she talks about heroes, and talks about how she's very much against them now, right? She's not a supporter of them by any means.
And it's also important to note, in case you are a heathen and haven't been in the Watchmen universe at all, that her ex-boyfriend is Dr. Manhattan. She was married, I believe her ex-husband.
Yeah, they were married.
She was married to a god. And now,
he left his first wife for her, right?
Yes, he did. He left his
very
first
complicated.
Wife for her.
Yep.
He was pretty human then. You know what I'm talking about?
She was younger and sexier at the time, and he still had some emotions, I guess. So she's calling out to Dr. Manhattan, someone that she was very close with at one point, and I think she needs a sign from him. No one's seen him in 30 years, and I think she just needs people will look at him as God, and I think she's looking for that too. And I love that she tells that story about the little girl who throws the brick up in the air, how it comes down and it hits God in the head, and it actually kills him because God didn't see it, and he goes to hell. And it's this really like crazy story. And she's like, oh, some joke, And later on, something falls out of the sky and crashes onto her car. And she looks up and she starts laughing because, I think she probably feels Dr. Manhattan heard her. He listened to her message and he was sending her a sign.
Yeah, well, I think that's actually the car that the old man was in. Because earlier he...
Oh, you're right.
Earlier,
the car
he gets
dropped down
lifted
behind her.
up by we don't know
right.
what, some magnet. He gets lifted up by something, and then we never see him again. And then that car comes down, and she's laughing.
Right.
It's wild. But she plays a role so great. She's like hardcore, but when you do see those moments of vulnerability, it's like, oh, shit. Before we move on, I just want to bring up a couple other points from episode 1. How so at one point the police, they do go to storm a 7K cattle ranch where they're like taking the batteries out of watches to make a bomb. And after she beats the shit out of this guy, I think, he kills himself with a suicide pill. She sees this old school ad for the bank, and it has the character, he was a superhero back in the day, named Dollar Bill. And it's like, crooks are afraid of Dollar Bill, blah, blah, blah. Like, I guess he's there protecting banks or something, or they used him as a spokesperson. But there's a black man that he's holding. Like, it's really old school imagery, like something you would see like from propaganda, like, World War II era. And it's like, crooks, blah, blah, like this black guy is a crook. And that right there was so like Aunt Jemima to me and everything. Like, really, I was like, way to go. Like, there's so many great subtle stuff. And if we were to go through all of it, we'd be stuck here for hours. But they really have a lot of great subtleties they threw in. And, at this one, the Heritage Center has a whole mural of black history on it. Someone has a sign that instead of saying the end is nigh, which was in the original Watchmen series, it says the future is bright.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm telling you, when I said I stopped every 2 seconds to take a fucking note, I did it. Probably end up cutting this out. How sweet was that weapon set up in her house when she got the page to go? When she got the call to go after Judd hanging from the tree. When she she lays back, pushes the headboard, the fucking shotgun comes out, she reaches under the fireplace, pulls a handgun, gives it to her husband.
I get it though. After we saw like the night that they were all attacked, you know what I mean? Like,
man, yeah.
That, you know what I mean? Like, she's always on the defensive because no matter how many times she tells people she's not a police officer, do they really believe her? No, and like, for example, Blake knew, right? Lori Blake knew right away who they all were.
Well,
she had all their identities.
She's not an idiot.
Yeah, so, I love her character. She's just so intelligent. She knows right away that there's more to the story. She's the one that finds the wheelchair tracks by the tree where the chief was hanged. She knows that something was taken out of his closet. She knows that Angela's hiding something. And I love that scene where she says, and I eat the good guys for breakfast. And Angela goes, oh, and it pours the coffee down because they're both hardcore. You know what I mean? They're not gonna. Neither of them's gonna back down.
Yeah, neither of them really have any reason to. Like Angela, we don't know what happened to her parents, but we don't know what happened to her parents, but we do know that she mentions to her adopted son Topher. She goes like, "Listen, you and me, like, we both know what life is. We know it's not lollipops and rainbows. I'm gonna tell you straight up, your uncle was killed last night." Like, she doesn't. She doesn't hold back. Oh, and at this point, we do find out that Topher has powers, right? Are we going to talk about that? It doesn't really play into any of the political themes yet, but we see that Topher is a psychic. He's playing with his little building toys and floating them in the air.
I thought that was just like technology.
Is that what you thought? Like,
honestly,
like it was a magnetic thing that was kept up?
Yeah, honestly, that's what I thought it was.
Well, if he... fuck, I can't ask you anything because you already know. Like, you'd be the one... like to be like, oh well, it looks like he has powers, but like, later on he ends up being like Dr. Manhattan or something.
I will say sometimes I throw those things in there to purposely throw you off. But anyway, I don't remember enough from the original watch to verify or deny. So.
Oh God. We had this great moment in episode 2. It starts off with a German guy. Is he a Nazi? I don't know. But he's sending a message to a few friends, it looks like, in America, or they're not in America, but they're fighting for America in World War II, and they're black. And he's like, why are you fighting for this country? Like, can you still sit in the same restaurant, sit in the same theater seat, same seat on the bus? Can you still ride in the same car with white people? Or no? Like, they lynch you guys there. Why don't you come over to Germany? Like, fight for us. Like, they're very powerful black people in business. They've got, they got a great economy in Berlin. Like, it was, just an interesting point. I think this was the letter that O.B. actually wrote on the back of and gave to his son.
Yeah, I think so too.
But how does that make fucking sense? How could he write on a World War II? Was that in the 20s? No.
Was it World War One? Maybe.
It might have been World War One.
Because World War One was
also Germans,
1918.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
So it's probably World War One.
I'm an American histories major. American history? How terrible?
Because Tulsa was 1921, so that would make a lot of sense, and that would be why he had his uniform, because he'd probably just recently come back from World War One within the last year or two, and last couple of years, and yeah. So that's what I think that probably
Real
was.
quick note, there's no way that Sister Night doesn't use a stencil for her face paint. Sorry. They just showed her airbrushing with nothing on it, and then it cuts to her with perfect lines on her face. I'm like, fuck you guys.
Yeah.
She uses a stencil.
My quick note is, and I talked about this off mic, was throughout this, the characters are constantly taking their masks down. And I think the Chief's like, put your face back on. And it's just kind of like America today, where people keep taking their masks down when they're supposed to be wearing them in public. It's like,
yep.
God damn it, wear your mask, all right?
Yeah.
So,
wearing a mask for safety.
We see Senator Joe Keene almost assassinated at Chief Judd's funeral.
Yeah, by a bomber, a suicide bomber, actually.
Yeah, who has he claims that if they, it's tied to his heart, and if everyone doesn't move, he's gonna kill everyone there. He's taking Senator Joe Keene, and Blake just shoots him in the head. She doesn't give a fuck. She just kills him.
And she was the only one to bring a gun too.
Yeah, and the bomb is ready to go off. And Angela activates quickly by pulling his corpse, throwing it into the hole where the chief was going to be buried in, and then flipping his casket over on top of it.
Jesus.
Which is, ooh, God,
yeah.
Brutal. But I mean, obviously it saves everyone there. And Blake does mention they were going to exhume the body of the chief the next day, but they can't do that now. And, so it does make you, realize, all right, so the 7th Cavalry does not want Joe Keene to be, reelected at this point, because he's the one that kind of pushed for this whole mask thing for the police, which has really, harmed their movement.
Yeah, and just to go back to that, I was really blown away by what you said. Like, the masks are so much...
So is Judd.
Well done. I'm keeping that in. But actually, I'm not sure if it's a political thing, but it is interesting that in that flashback with Angela and her husband, he says it's 2 minutes to midnight. Brings up the whole the Doomsday Clock theme that's constantly throughout the series, the comic book, and one of the sequels in DC Comics is called Doomsday Clock. Hold on, where are we at in the Doomsday Clock right now? It is 100 seconds to midnight, meaning that we are the closest we've ever been.
Wow.
Yeah. Humanity continues to
terrifying.
face... Oh, this is as of January 23rd, so we're probably like 10 seconds to midnight now.
Yeah.
Humanity continues to face 2 simultaneous existential dangers, nuclear war and climate change. Oh, that was back then, baby. That was back then. That was in January.
Woo!
But yeah, also there's this whole thing with... we're talking about people with masks and taking them down, but also there are people who don't believe certain things. Like, there are constantly squids reminiscent of the alien that blew up 3 million people, or the aliens that blew up 3 million people across the world. There are all these squids that are raining down at random points of the day. They have an alarm so people can pull over so they don't get hurt while driving. And that was so, like, reminiscent of America today with COVID-19 and everything, how, like, instead of trying to fix a problem, Like, historically, that's what the U.S. does, right? We don't fix a problem. We just take it and we move along with it. Like, we're such a tough country that way that, like, we really should have closed down like everybody else, paid everyone to stay home, gotten rid of the virus altogether in the U.S., but we didn't. And so now it's like, all right, well, It's just normal. We fucking wear masks and have, our hands bleed from hand sanitizer all the time. And, like, that's just what life is. And it seems like that's what they've done, as well in the Watchmen world, is they've just, all right, well, these squids just happen. But there are people who don't even believe that it's like a legitimate problem. They believe that it's a conspiracy put forth by the United States government, by President Redford. And that right there is also very reminiscent of how people feel about COVID-19 today, too.
Yeah, definitely. You could definitely see those comparisons there. Now this show came out before any of this, right? So it's kind of wild.
Fucking did. Actually, I also want to mention how there's advertisements for this. It might be a docuseries or something that's about the old school justice, like old school vigilantes and stuff. Yeah, like with hooded justice and everything, and old school vigilantes. And before they show the TV show, it says this program contains terrible depictions of people of color, nudity, racism, anti-Semitic,
anti-LGBTQ,
anti-LGBTQIA. It should not be viewed by children, even if there's an adult supervision. Blah blah blah. It's basically what we also do. Like you see, like on Disney Plus, they'll be like, by the way, we kind of fucked up back in the day, so don't take this stuff seriously, but this is the art, this is what it was, so we're going to show it as it was. Like, it's very much so like this is a program in Watchmen that's meant to glorify and show like old school superheroism and vigilanteism, but meanwhile it does show all the problematic stuff of the past. Reminds me today, like we're always raising our kids with this stuff, all this like oh, the soldiers are always the greatest heroes and whatever, and like we'll show them violent movies and TV shows and everything else and be like, all right, like there's the stuff you're supposed to idolize. And we see Topher is actually watching that Hooded Justice show.
Yeah, I mean, Hooded Justice being the first vigilante, I believe, in the Watchmen universe.
I think he was, yes.
He brutally dispatches of these people that are robbing the store.
The store, yeah. It's amazing.
He's like smashing the dude's face onto the counter and stuff. He crushes it with something. I'm like, holy shit! Like, they were not pulling any punches there. But I obviously they were intentionally showing like how violent and graphic this was going to be. And yet, like you said, Topher's watching it. Little kid's watching it.
I want to talk about Judd real quick as far as what we know about him too. And we see that in Judd's house after he's already dead. His wife is having people over that he was close to and everything. She's entertaining guests. This is when Sister Night goes into his closet and finds out that there was a Klansman outfit there. But we see that as she's leaving, they zoom in on the painting on the wall, which is it's depicting the Comanche horsemen. Comanche, they have their history in Oklahoma. And they were like very well known for their like nomadic equestrian life, and like there's this horsemanship ritual that they have that was being depicted in the painting, and this kind of reminded me of just like the liberal mindset, you know what I mean? Like the neoliberal mindset that Judd was on the surface. He was all like, pro-Native American. He's using Little Bighorn as codes. He's, has the painting of the Comanche horseman. He's pro-black. He's best friends with black people. And they're basically part of his family and everything else. But why was, and we'll find out later, I don't know yet. We'll find out later, like, why was this Klansman outfit in there? Is it just something that like his grandfather kept around? Was it something that he actually was? Like, did he secretly hate black people, but on the surface wasn't racist? Like that tends to be the case, like we find with like a lot of liberal or neoliberal people who like they claim to be allies, but when it comes to actually putting their money where their mouth is, they're not.
Yeah, I mean, maybe even like he was racist and then forming a friendship with Angela changed him, you know what I mean? Sometimes
very possible. Yeah,
meeting someone who comes from a different background can really open your eyes. So we don't know enough about him. We know that he's very loved by the people in his life. The police, people in the police force, they loved him. They really respected him. He was out there with his face showing, he didn't wear a mask. He was openly, there to support them. And, he was at Angela's bedside when she was attacked. on that horrible night and like held her hand and said, "I failed you." So we don't really know. But we know that, Lori Blake is not going to drop this. And Angela's obviously going to be investigating further as she gets to know her grandfather and figure out how a man in a wheelchair hanged him. So
yeah, and I think that, that would also describe, like, us in the way that we came from a very specific demographic and where we grew up, and we might not have necessarily have been racist, but might have had some problematic views, and then coming into contact with people of different races and ethnicities and backgrounds and everything, like, really, helped round out our, our opinions about people. Anything else you wanted to talk about regarding these first 3 episodes?
No, I think we covered most of the important stuff, so I'm just excited to watch the next 3 and get into that next week.
I am too. I'm really looking forward to it. I will say that episode 3, it began with Batman slander, which I'm not a fan of, but it is what it is. They had like a proxy for Batman getting owned by Lori Blake and all of her Fed friends. But yeah, that being said, definitely watch this show. There's so many great bits in there that we weren't able to talk about because aside from just its politics and its social awareness, it's also just a really well put together show. Great acting. The music in episode 2 I noted was fucking amazing. It was very like John Carpenter, Halloween-esque to me. Maybe it was just me, but yeah, if you listen back to it, it was great. That being said, in the meantime, please make sure to listen to us and rate and review us on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or the iHeartRadio app. You can find us on Twitter at PolitiPopPod. You can find us on Instagram at PolitiPopPodcast. You can email us at politipopcast.com. Don't forget to find our show notes and sources at politipoppodcast.wordpress.com. We're going to be writing out on the following song today, which is somewhat relevant. It's somewhat relevant. It's by Ludacris, and it's called Silence of the Lambs. Very, very socially aware. A lot of current events going on in there. Please make sure that you watch the first 3 episodes, and that way this podcast makes sense to you. Next week, we'll be back with episodes 4 through 6. Thank you so much for listening, and also a special thanks to Antonia Little for logo design. For the Politipop podcast, I've been Mike Booch.
I've been Ty.
No matter what you're watching, no matter what you're reading, no matter what you're listening to, remember to never stop learning, never stop thinking, and always read between the lines.
Niggas is wearing a bulletproof vest just to go outside. Innocent people are bystanders. Some are recording murders on their cameras or they on live. Social media got kids wanting to commit suicide because everybody's getting scrutinized. Graham Stunton knows the truest lies. Now the parents need to be supervised. That's ass backwards. Bombs blowing from the terrorist attackers. Natural disasters, computer crashes, world leaders clashing, separating us into different classes. Protect the elite and destroy the masses. So all up in the hood is pistols blasting. No wonder why the hood gets no compassion. We don't have no safe.
Good. Very
Actually,
good.
where does DeJoy live?
That's a good question.
DeJoy residence.
Texas.
Texas?
Why? I don't know. I'm just making shit up.
Oh, God damn it. Hold on, okay.
Washington, D.C.
Yo, Washington Post is fucking me right here. I don't want to pay $1
They always do that, man.
for your fucking bullshit. Did you see that it was Washington, D.C.? Oh, no, wait. Yeah, there's this really nice article. Not really nice. There's a really, how do I fuck
Informative?
Thank you. That's so good.
Yeah, and I think we should just mention, Senator Joe Keane was almost assassinated by the 7th Cavalry at the
Judd's
chief's
wedding.
funeral.
Wedding.
Wedding? Whoa! Dude, Angel's marrying his
death.
corpse.
Sorry.
You're right. He's married to death.
Whenever you want.
I'm sorry. We see Senator Joe Keane almost assassinated at Chief Judd's
Bar mitzvah.
funeral.
Okay, I'm sorry. Last one. That was the last one. I'm sorry. Sorry.
All right.
Yeah. Really good to note that a bunch of the notes I made for the next 2 episodes, I already talked about those things in the first part of this episode. So that's
Nice.
Good.
It's perfect.
It's just, because basically it was all plot stuff. Like, oh, this is what happened, blah, blah, blah. What time is it on the doomsday clock? 2020
Who watches
Doomsday
the
Clock.
Doomsday Clock?
Sorry, let me just look it up so I don't sound like a fucking idiot. Oh, the Comanches were from Oklahoma. I didn't know that. Okay. Comanche horsemanship. So we do So we also see that during this this kind of like service. What is she holding? A vigil? What the fuck is she holding for Judd, his wife? All right, hold on.
At her house?
Yeah. What is it? The technical term? I don't know. All right, I'll figure it out. Here we go.
A celebration of his life.
I love how they do say at one point. They literally say like masks save lives. In the show.
Yep, that's funny.
That had nothing to do with what you just said, but I just saw it in my notes. You know what? Let me actually follow up to what you just said though.
And then I gotta go.
Yeah.
Soon.
Oh yeah, shit. You gotta go when? Like soon, right?
Yeah, like in a minute.
Okay, cool. All right, sorry.
And scene.
Thank you. What the fuck?